Hello and welcome to the Bottom Line Lexington podcast, and today is the first in a series of shows that we're going to do called Big Blue Nation Revisionist History Theater. And in this series, we're going to take memorable moments from UK football, from UK men's basketball, and we're going to shine a light on them and maybe give you a little different perspective on what actually occurred, other than biased hearsay from the slanted media here in town. First, we're going to start with the mother of all games in the state of Kentucky's history, the 1983 Dream Game between Louisville and Kentucky in the NCAA tournament in Knoxville, Tennessee. The year is 1983. I defy you to name anything 30 years ago that is better than it is today. Everything is better today than it was in the 80s. Everything. There's only three things that were better in the 80s than they are today. Those three things are college basketball, music, and professional wrestling. That's it. That's the list. Kentucky played Louisville in 1959. After that, Kentucky refused to play Louisville for reasons that allegedly were because if we play Louisville, we have to play everybody else in the state, which is a big pile of crap, but that's what they went with. In the NCAA tournament, they both made the Final Four in 1975, but they still didn't have a matchup. 1978, Kentucky's the national champions. 1980, Louisville's the national champions. Right after that Louisville national championship, what is one of the headlines in the Louisville Courier-Journal the next day? It said, "Okay, UK, what is your excuse now?" They just won a national championship, and the first thing they're worried about, will Kentucky finally play us now? Are we worthy of the University of Kentucky playing us? That's where we were back in the 80s. So 1982 rolls around. Allegedly, and this is all alleged, and this is from Billy Reed of the Courier-Journal, so take that how you will. But according to Billy Reed of the Courier-Journal, Kentucky did offer to play Louisville, but it would be in the first game of the season in the Hall of Fame game. And then according to this article I'm reading by Billy Reed, Joe B. Hall said they chose not to play us. They made a choice on their own free will without any pressure from public or fans. It was perfectly in their rights, and I have no complaints at all. Of course, that's what Joe B. Hall would say. And according to Billy Reed, here was the catch. Denny Crum was saying that Joe B. Hall wanted to get the Louisville game out of the way and wanted Louisville to play them in the Hall of Fame game because the previous year, Louisville had just lost 6 seniors and Kentucky was expecting everybody to come back, including Sam Bowie. So you had Kentucky fully experienced. Here comes Sam Bowie back. And Louisville, all their best players, 6 seniors, gone. Completely young. Don't want to play them 10 games into the season. You want them game 1. Joe B. Hall knew what he was doing. But so did Denny Crum. Denny Crum, in response to all that, said, "My name is Tucker, not Sucker. I've been around this game for a while. I'm not that dumb. He wanted the best of both worlds. I don't blame him for trying, but I wasn't born yesterday." All that is for the Kentucky offer to play Louisville in Game 1 in the Hall of Fame game. 1982 season commences. Louisville makes the tournament as a 3 seed in the Mid-East region. Yes, back then they were called the Mid-East, not the Southeast. I will go to my grave saying they changed it from Mid-East to Southeast because they didn't want to be confused with the Middle East, but that's just me. Louisville's a 3 seed, Kentucky's a 6 seed, but back then, there were 48 teams in the tournament. So the first 4 seeds in each region got a bye from the first round, and the 6 seed would play the 11 seed to advance to play the 3 seed who was lying in wait. The 11 seed, Middle Tennessee. So all Kentucky had to do was beat lowly Middle Tennessee from the Ohio Valley Conference. Yes, Eastern Kentucky, Moorhead, Murray, that's who they had to get through just to make the tournament. And now all Kentucky has to do is win 1 game, and the dream game is on in Nashville. Funny thing happened. Middle Tennessee won the game. How big a deal was this in Middle Tennessee? I'm going to play a clip from the NBC affiliate in Nashville, WSMV, which was literally done 2 days before Middle Tennessee's upset of Michigan State this past March, which is in the top 5 of all-time NCAA tournament upsets, and totally trumped this game in which they beat Kentucky. But here's how proud they still are 24 years later of that victory over Kentucky them being Middle Tennessee.
This is a prized possession. The Kent Seiler, who just had on earlier for the politics part of this, brought this in. This is the basketball when MTSU beat Kentucky in 1982, 50-44. Now, this was a big moment because if Kentucky would have won that basketball game, they would have played Louisville for the first time in decades. So the entire Commonwealth, came down for this basketball game, but MTSU shocked the world. Every MTSU fan would love to have this. Kent, we got to give it back, right?
Yeah.
We're taking it back. So it's a prized possession. Middle, of course, plays Michigan State Friday in the first round.
So even in Nashville, they knew how much this game meant to the people in Kentucky. And even in Nashville, they're still gloating about it. Now, 2 days later, they beat Michigan State, thereby trumping this game against Kentucky in 1982. For Kentucky that year, Melvin Turpin was easily their best player. Derek Horde and Charles Hurt were their forwards. Jim Master and Dirk Minifield were their guards. And a freshman named Kenny Walker was usually the first one off the bench, along with Dickie Beal, who we will focus big time in our next edition of Revisionist History Theater. But I digress. Louisville had Scooter and Rodney McCray being the Metro Conference. Yes, the Metro Conference. Those of you born after 1983 have absolutely no idea what the Metro Conference is. Go look it up. Louisville, Memphis, and that's it. The McCray brothers, Charles Jones, Lancaster Gordon, Milt Wagner. Those are your Iron Five guys for Louisville. All those guys, every one of those players got cups of coffee in the NBA. Whereas for Kentucky, Turpin was a lottery pick. Dirk Minifield played a little while in the NBA. And Kenny Walker eventually became a lottery pick. But his freshman year, you never would have known that. So Kentucky loses to Middle Tennessee in 82. We flash forward to 1983, and the NCAA Tournament Committee says, we're going to get it right one of these days. We're going to keep putting Kentucky and Louisville together until they play. Well, they got their wish. UK upsets Bobby Knight in Indiana in the Sweet 16. Louisville beats Arkansas, and Eddie Sutton, there's a name for you, Lexington people. So here we have it. March 26, 1983. Number 1 seed Louisville, ranked number 2 in the country going into the tournament. Number 3 seed Kentucky, ranked number 12 in the country going into the tournament. How much has the game changed since 1983? In this game, there's no three-point shot. There's no shot clock. Both teams are wearing Converse tennis shoes, for crying out loud. Well, when's the last time you saw somebody wearing a Converse tennis shoe? So to set up this battle, let's go to our old pal, Brent Musburger, who is looking live at the NCAA tournament from the CBS studios.
And you know, for over 2 decades now, fans and politicians and ordinary citizens have tried to bring together these 2 natural basketball rivals, Kentucky and Louisville. Now, the relentless rules of that bracket board have succeeded where so many others have failed. Yes, it is a shotgun wedding, but Louisville and Kentucky are finally going to play each other. The last time these 2 schools opposed each other in basketball was in 1959. That means they haven't met in 24 years. Now, both clubs have won national championships lately, but why the 2 schools, located only 60 miles apart, do not play each other on a regularly scheduled basis is a touchy subject, as John Tesh found out.
Something that I should know about why I'm not really getting a hard and fast reason as to why.
I can't answer that. I don't know.
You don't. These two schools are so close, and they both have great basketball programs. Yet,
Could we dissolve here just a minute? Is that all?
They won't play.
They're afraid of you?
Well, what did you ask them then?
Well, we asked Coach Hall,
And he wouldn't give you an answer, would he?
Well, he tried to walk out of the interview, actually.
Yeah, well, that's typical.
We don't care who we play. I'm sure Kentucky feels the same way. We're going to play, but you know that's the way it is. This time of year, you're just happy to be playing.
They're ready to play whoever they would happen to meet in the finals. As it turns out, it's Louisville, and that's a long-awaited game, and I think our players are going to be ready to play.
Wow, there's a lot to take away from that. First and foremost, John Tesh is doing the interview of Coach Joe B. Hall and Denny Crum. Yes, that John Tesh. Entertainment Tonight John Tesh. Live at the Red Rocks, John Tesh. NBA on NBC theme song, John Tesh. Horrible adult contemporary national FM radio show, John Tesh. What's he doing covering basketball in 1983? Anyway, did you hear what Joe B. Hall did when John Tesh asked him a simple question? Why don't you play Louisville? I haven't seen more scared backpedaling since the last time I rode my dirt bike when I was 7 years old. Can we cut the camera off? Can we dissolve? Is that thing off? Really? That's how you're going to answer that question? That's sad. Denny Crum had the right attitude. We want to play him. If you don't want to play us, we don't care. But we want to play because we want to play the best teams. And leading up to that year, even though Kentucky had won a national championship in 1978, Louisville had been the better team. In the previous decade, they had made 4 Final Fours, and they'd also won a national championship. Whereas Joe B. Hall was going around saying, this is just another game. It wasn't just another game to Louisville, and it wasn't just another game to the fans of both teams. The fact that Joe B. Hall was downplaying this as just another game makes you wonder what was really going on. Was he really that scared? Was that coming from a power on high telling him to do this? So the stage is set. Kentucky and Louisville will finally play. They're playing in Knoxville, Tennessee at the Stokely Athletic Center. Attendance, 12,489. When's the last time a regional final had 12,000 people there? This might be the last one. Today, they're played at dome stadiums. They're played at 20-plus thousand seat arenas. And believe me when I tell you, if you can see the replay of this game, the lower level is nothing but fans. Unlike today, where it's corporate bigwigs getting their free tickets because they sold the most steak knives last month. So the stage is set as we go live to Gary Bender and Big Blue Nation favorite Billy Packer at the Dream Game.
The state of Kentucky at a fever pitch. Kentucky against Louisville. History is being made today, as for the first time in 24 years they're going to be. Hi everybody, I'm Gary Bender along with Billy Packer. Billy, the tradition of these two schools. 5 NCAA championships for Kentucky, 1 for Louisville. It's incredible that they haven't played in 24 years.
Well, it is amazing, Gary, and it's been a political football. It's been on every talk show and in an editorial page of every paper in the state. I'm not enough of a politician to figure out why they can't get together on that issue. I'm also amazed that they haven't met in the NBA because they both have had such a great basketball tradition in history.
The coach of the Kentucky Wildcats is Joe B. Hall. The coach of the Louisville Cardinals is Denny Crum.
Did you hear the smattering of boos when Joe B. Hall was introduced right there at the end? Yeah, I did too. It felt like there were more Louisville fans in the crowd than Kentucky fans, which you would expect only because Kentucky has referred to Louisville as their little brother for 24 years. So in a game like this, who's got the most pressure? It's obvious, right? The team that's favored, the team that's supposed to win, the team that will be upset if they lose. Louisville's the number 1 seed in the region. Louisville's ranked number 2 in the country. Kentucky lost 8 games that year going into the tournament. They're the number 3 seed. They have nothing to lose. Louisville's supposed to win. So as a kid, why did I feel like Kentucky had the most pressure on them? Was I crazy? Or was I just like everybody else, including Big Blue Nation favorite Billy Packer?
Hey, Gary, I think there's a lot more pressure on the Kentucky kids than there are on the Louisville kids, and I'm anxious to see right off the bat how they react to the great intensity level on the defensive pressure by Louisville.
So yeah, even though they're the underdog, Kentucky has more pressure on them. It's kind of weird if you think about it. Louisville is the better team with the better recent track record, but Kentucky still is under more pressure. So the game starts. Kentucky races out to a 23-10 lead. As a kid, I'm in shock. I can't believe that Kentucky's playing this well. Derek Horde hits a few shots. Jim Master hits a few shots. Melvin Turpin playing very well inside. And Louisville can't hit anything. They missed 17 of their first 20 shots. And in fact, in the first half, they didn't hit a field goal outside of the paint. That shows you how off they were in the first half. But even though Kentucky's dominating, the announcers can't help but wonder what this game might have been.
Sam Bowie, by the way, sitting on a bench. He's waited, I guess patiently might be the word all year. But the goodness, The good news is that Sam Bowie is now on the heel. Now here's Turpin, and here's the man that he has had to fill the shoes of, Sam Bowie. Would they have been something if Bowie would have played this year? Well, Gary, if we want to get into the what-ifs, what if Georgia had Wilkins? What if Carolina had Worthy? What if DePaul had Cummings?
Didn't take them long to wonder aloud what this team would be with Sam Bowie, did it? Also, Billy Packer dropping some old school names there. Dominique Wilkins at Georgia. By the way, how good was Dominique Wilkins? As soon as he leaves Georgia, they make their only Final Four appearance ever. James Worthy at North Carolina? You think Michael Jordan was as good as James Worthy? Terry Cummings at DePaul. 30 years ago, DePaul was actually really good at basketball. I know it's shocking today because they haven't made the tournament in God knows how long. But in the late 70s, early 80s, they were a fixture. Now, they were also a team that got number one seeds and lost in the first round. I seem to remember a game against St. Joseph's in 1981 where DePaul as a one seed lost a first round game. Literally 10 seconds before U.S. Reed hit a half-court shot against Louisville. But I'm just showing off now. But yes, how many times during the season did people say, oh, if we just had Sam Bowie? Well, you got your fix of Sam Bowie next year in 1984. And like I said earlier, we'll focus on that 1984 team and a big-time conspiracy theory that I have in the next edition of Big Blue Nation Revisionist History Theater. Was Joe B. Hall fired up to win this game? Absolutely he was. This was right at the end of the first half when he was protesting a call and literally walked out onto the court, sending Billy Packer into a conniption, begging for a technical foul. I apologize for the sound of this clip early on. It's a little sketchy, but it's worth it.
Bowie not able to play this year because of a fractured shin, and now we've got a 5-second call. He's got to get a technical. He has got to get a technical. He has got to get a technical. You can't walk out on the floor. Billy, in all honesty, you know what happened there? He ran into a cameraman. End result, Joe B. Hall is saying that disrupted our organization, so we didn't get the play started right. Here you have a piece of officiating taking place right here. Hank Nichols, one of the best in the country, going down there and explaining to Denny Crump why they did not call the technical foul. I see that. Good call, Barry. I didn't see that play, and that's what Joe Hall was talking about. Good call on your part, and look at what's taking place. They're giving the ball back to Kentucky because our guy was in the way.
3 times in that last clip, Billy Packer said, he has got to get a technical. I wonder if Dean Smith had done that. I guarantee you he wouldn't have said that then. So as we get closer to halftime, Kentucky's 13-point lead is now shrunk down to 7, and you can kind of feel the momentum slipping towards Louisville as they apply more backcourt pressure on Kentucky as we go to the half.
Well, we're halfway there, deciding the issue. And at halftime, Kentucky with a 7-point lead. Scores and highlights. An update on Virginia, North Carolina State. Here is Brent Musburger.
All right, Gary, thank you. So far, of course, Kentucky has dictated the pace of this basketball game. But remember, Louisville trailed Arkansas by 16 points, and then they picked the tempo up in the second half.
Wow, after this game, it's Virginia and NC State? Oh, that's easy. Give me Virginia. They've got Ralph Sampson. That's easy money. So anyway, Kentucky up 7 at the break, and Denny Crum goes in at halftime, and he tells his players that Kentucky has played as well as they possibly can, and they're only up 7. There's a lot of truth to that. Jim Master and Derek Horde have played much better in the first half than you would have ever expected against such an athletic team like Louisville. So what does Louisville do? They come out in the second half, full court press. Kentucky commits 18 turnovers for the game, but 14 in the second half alone. And that does not include overtime. 14 turnovers in 20 minutes. This is without a shot clock, too. In fact, they went through one stretch where they had 5 possessions and only made it over half court one time. That's how potent that press was, or how incompetent the Kentucky guards were. You can go back and watch it and figure it out for yourself. I think it's a little bit of both. So Kentucky up 7 at halftime, 37-30. Louisville outscores them 28-13. to take a 58-50 lead. Then Kentucky puts on a half-court trap. They get some turnovers. They hit a few shots. And all of a sudden, we've got a tie ball game with 2:22 left. Now, this is just going to show you how much the game has changed between then and now. Kentucky has the ball with 2 minutes and 22 seconds left. What should they do? Let Billy Packer tell you himself, the master of strategy.
We're all even 60 all with 1:48 to go.
I think we're seeing, Gary, some great coaching moves in this game. Denny Crum and what he's done with his pressure. Joe Hall and what he's been able to do in structuring this comeback right here. He's been able now to come back with Melvin Turpin. He used the smaller lineup to go chase, put Turpin down. Now he's got Turpin back in the game. I wouldn't be a bit surprised at Joe Hall saying, if we don't get a layup, we don't put up a shot. They go into a little delay game. Here it is. I think Kentucky going to hang on to this ball. And a good, wise move. I don't think we'll see a shot from Kentucky unless they have an uncontested layup, and they'll take it all the way down to about 20 seconds and then look to go inside the Turpin.
So with under 2 minutes to go now in a tie game, Kentucky's going to hold the ball with no shot clock. They're just going to sit there and hold it and try to take the last shot. That's either scared, gutsy, or intelligent. I don't even know which one it is. I know Dean Smith was called a genius when he had the massive four corners offense. But why would you run a four-corner offense when you have guys like Sam Perkins, James Worthy, and Michael Jordan? It's kind of like a couple of years ago when Kentucky tried to take the air out of the ball against Wisconsin when they were 38-0. That's how you end up 38-1 when you get tricky like that. But I digress. So Kentucky now holding the ball for one shot in the game of the century, the dream game. Everything on the line. What happens? Here we go.
20 seconds. Jones blocked it. Kentucky will go. They got to go for the timeout. Kentucky would ask for their final timeout. It was a great layup opportunity for Dirk Minifield. He had to go for it, but Jones, just like in the Arkansas game, has been the man of the hour. They call them the Blockbirds, and that might be the biggest block of the year. A lot of time left, though, Gary. 8 teams can get organized.
Since that was an absolutely horrible play-by-play call by Gary Bender and Billy Packer, let me try to explain what happened. 20 seconds left, Dirk Minifield dekes out Lancaster Gordon, has a wide-open lane to the basket, but it's fool's gold. Charles Jones beats him to the basket and blocks his shot. The rebound gets into Lancaster Gordon's hands, who comes down and hits a little 8-footer, and Louisville is up by 2 with 8 seconds left. I honestly think that Billy Packer was in such shock that he couldn't say anything and he kept calling for timeouts. Both announcers were so just overwhelmed by the moment that they couldn't tell you what was going on. They still haven't said what happened and who hit the shot for Louisville. And so Kentucky, after having a 13-point lead, then losing it and being down 8 in the second half, rallying to tie, is down 2 again with 8 seconds. I wouldn't have given you any odds whatsoever on what was about to happen because I thought Kentucky was done. I was wrong.
Well, Master hasn't missed a shot in the second half. You'd figure maybe they would go to him. Let's see. Minifield on to Beal. There goes Dirk. 2. They're going to have to get it out. Master. Jim Master, the man who in the second half has been uncanny from outside, put it in, and we have a 5-minute overtime.
When I was a kid, it seemed like Kaywood Ledford absolutely hated Jim Master. Every time Jim Master would miss a shot, well, Master can't throw one in the ocean tonight. Sometimes it was funny, sometimes it was almost cruel. But Jim Master hits his 5th out of 5 shots in the second half to send that game to overtime. So here you have it. Dream game. First meeting in forever. Now we're going to overtime. Winner goes to the Final Four. So big time, big pressure situation, right? CBS has got to be focused on both teams' huddles going into overtime. The pressure, the instructions, the tension. No, let's go look for the governor of Kentucky in his stupid red and blue jacket.
Well, this is a big day for the state of Kentucky. The governor of Kentucky, John Y. Brown on the right, and the lovely Phyllis George Brown of CBS, and the First Lady. He is wearing, as you can see, the split coat, the red and the blue. He sat on the Kentucky side the first half, now on the Louisville side in the second half.
It seems like everybody who remembers John Y. Brown, the first thing they remember is that stupid jacket. In fact, John Wayne Brown himself said, "I think more people remember me for that coat than anything I did as governor." He's right. What does anybody remember about John Y. Brown? Here's what I remember. Phyllis George was his wife. That stupid red and white jacket at the Dream Game. That's it. That's the list. He's right. It's rare when a game that has this much hype lives up to it. How many Super Bowls underperform, especially during the 80s? Every Super Bowl in the 80s was a dud. It's very rare. This one lived up to the hype. But sadly, for Kentucky fans, it ended as soon as the overtime started. Louisville jumped out to a 12-0 overtime advantage. They won the overtime 18-6 and won the game 80-68. Louisville hit 30 of their last 36 shots. Wow. Denny Crum, after the game, obviously very happy, saying that it was a snowball effect and congratulating his team because Kentucky shot 56% for the game and still got beat. But if you want to sum it up, of course, we have to go looking live for the great Brent Musburger, who will tell it like it is.
Louisville is now 32-3. They have won 16 in a row. They're on their way to Albuquerque. Kentucky ends their season at 23-8. We'll be back with some post-game interviews. But now let's go to New York. Here's Brent Musburger.
Hi, Gary. It's only appropriate that if you wait 24 years, you should go to overtime. And what a magnificent show in that overtime by Louisville. Your MVPs goes to Lancaster Gordon of the winning Louisville team, 24 points and 4 steals. For Kentucky, a tremendous performance by Melvin Turpin, 18 points and 9 rebounds. I know that Louisville was magnificent in overtime, but when you look back on this contest, in the second half, remember that Kentucky had been up by 13 points in the first. It was the inability of Kentucky to handle that man's full-court press, Denny Crum. It took them a while before they finally brought the forwards up and went up over the top. Incredible pressure by Louisville. They turned it around, and it appeared for just a moment that Denny Crum had taken the air out of the basketball too soon, and he let Kentucky climb back in. But in the final analysis, it was that tremendous athletic skill of Louisville that got the job done.
You can make fun of Brent Musburger all you want. He does know his basketball. He was doing NBA games in the 70s. I don't think you'll ever find a more spot-on, unbiased point of view of that game than what you just heard at the end by Brent Musburger. Spot on in every way, shape, and form. Louisville was the better team with the better athletes, and their pressure killed Kentucky's back. That was the difference in the game. How bad was it for Coach Joe B. Hall and Kentucky? Well, even Hall's wife, Catherine, who he was married to for 55 years, was so distraught at seeing her husband lose that she got pissed off at the media and grabbed some reporter that she thought was against her husband's team and said, "Are you satisfied now? You've taken one of the finest men on the face of the earth and ruined him with your writing." Well, I know that Catherine Hall has passed away since then, but I don't think anyone was ruined by a reporter from Louisville's writing. In fact, I think Joe B. Hall has done quite well for himself in retirement. Maybe if he had shown this personality, it's kind of like Al Gore. If Al Gore had shown the personality that he has shown after he lost the election to Bush, he would have won that election hands down. Kind of like if Joe B. Hall had shown his personality while he was coaching, he probably would have been received better during his coaching tenure. But we didn't really see who these people were until after the pressure was off. Joe B. Hall still kicking at 87 years old. So what is the legacy of this game? Scooter McCrae himself said, if we, meaning Louisville, if we had lost this game, there probably would not have been a series started the next year. Because once Kentucky lost, we can't have that. We're going to schedule you now so we can try to get some revenge. Truth be told, these two teams played 3 times in less than a calendar year. And we'll go over the third meeting, along with another conspiracy-filled game, in our next Revisionist History Theater. I think Scooter McCrae is right, though. If Kentucky wins that game, Louisville crawls away like the little brother they've always been considered by Kentucky, and nothing happens. But since Kentucky lost, they were back on the court again 9 months later. In terms of legacies, kind of an epilogue, kind of like an Animal House, where are they now type synopsis of this game and the key players in it. As for Kentucky, as we stated earlier, Joe B. Hall did quite well for himself after he got done coaching. After this game, he only coached for 2 more years. He quit coaching when he was 56 years old. After this game, he only coached 2 more years. He made the Final Four in 1984, made the Sweet 16 in 1985. That was a surprise. He wasn't supposed to make the Sweet 16, got an upset win to make it. And then in 1985, he retired in his mid-50s. Don't see many coaches today retiring in their mid-50s. I honestly think the pressure was too much for him. I felt sorry for him a lot of times. I just felt like he was in a world he didn't want to be in. Sure, he wanted to coach, but he didn't want all the crap that went along with it. As for the UK seniors that year, Derek Horde averaged 8.9 points a game, was a third-round pick of the Cleveland Cavaliers in 1983, but never played. According to LinkedIn, Horde is now working at Sanders Brown as the Community Engagement Director with Alzheimer's Disease Center Outreach. Not bad. Charles Hurt averaged 8.2 points a game his senior year, and in 2012 went back to volunteer as a basketball coach at his old high school at Shelby County. Dirk Minifield averaged 8.6 points a game in his senior year, and then played in the NBA, playing for 4 teams in 3 seasons, after being a second-round pick in 1983 by the Dallas Mavericks, just missing the first round. Now, the rest of this I'm getting from his Wikipedia page, so I'm not making this up, and I'm reading verbatim now. Minifield began regularly using marijuana at age 14. His drug problem continued into college, admitted carrying a vial of cocaine with him regularly during his senior year at UK, and frequently took hits of the drug before games. Most notably, in 2007, he admitted that he and several teammates had gone to a park in Knoxville, Tennessee, the night before Kentucky's showdown with Louisville in the 1983 NCAA tournament and smoked marijuana. He also said that he smoked more marijuana after returning to his hotel room. So, of course, what are people going to think first? Minifield took that shot with 20 seconds to go in regulation that was blocked. Here's what Minifield went on to say about that shot. It was sad because that was the moment. You only have certain moments in your life. You have to seize your moment. I missed my moment. I don't know if the marijuana had an impact. I'm not a doctor. Being a player, I'm going to say that it did. Any other time, I would have dunked that ball. I know I was depressed about it for probably the first 2 years after college. It played a part in my drug use, the depression, and being from Lexington, I had to listen to complaining fans more than anybody else would. Wow, that's tough. That's tough to know that a guy had an addiction to a drug, and he and other people thinks that that's what cost Kentucky this game against Louisville. It's tough to live with that, especially in a fish tank like Kentucky, where everything is focused on the basketball team. I can only imagine what he went through. According to his Wikipedia page, Minifield now serves as a drug counselor in Houston. As for the Louisville legacy, Denny Crum coached 18 more years after this game. 18 more years. In fact, this team went to Albuquerque, or as my dad would say, Albuquerque. They went to Albuquerque to face Houston in the Final Four after this game. Quite possibly one of the greatest shows on the basketball court ever. If you remember that game, it was nothing but up and down, dunks left and right. Louisville had great athletes. Houston had great athletes. The only difference was Houston had Hakeem Olajuwon and Louisville did not. That's why Houston won that game. But Denny Crum coached 18 more years at Louisville after this year. He only made 1 Final Four. And in the next 5 years after this year, his team was ranked in the final poll at the end of the regular season once in the next 5 years after this. And that was the national championship year of 1986. So after this, take away that 1986 championship run, it was almost over for Denny Crum after this. Yeah, he coached a long time, but he didn't have a whole lot of big-time success. And if you had told me in 1986 that would be his last Final Four appearance, I would have said you were crazy. Well, I'm the crazy one. Rodney McCray, his senior year, averaged 11 points a game. Yet he was named Metro Conference Player of the Year. That should tell you a lot about where he was at. He scored over 9,000 points and over 5,000 rebounds in 10 seasons in the NBA after being the 3rd overall draft pick by the Houston Rockets in 1983. He was once named NBA All-Defensive First Team, and he played on the 1993 World Champion Chicago Bulls. His best season came in 1990 with Sacramento when he averaged 16.6 points a game and actually led the league in minutes played. His brother Scooter McRae averaged 9.1 points a game his senior year, was taken in the second round by the Seattle Supersonics in the 1983 NBA draft, and scored a total of 224 points in 77 career NBA games with 2 different teams over 3 years. And after he retired, McRae went back to Louisville to be an assistant coach. As far as a where are they now on the rest of these guys, we'll have that in our next podcast, which will focus on the 1984 Kentucky-Louisville game, as well as a conspiracy theory for the ages in a game that came after that game. So let's bottom line this dream game from 1983. Kentucky did not want to play Louisville, thought Louisville was beneath them, when in actuality, Louisville had been the better team, the better program 5 years running. Whether Kentucky was scared, whether they were just trying to keep them down, we could debate that until the end of time. But the bottom line here is, Louisville simply was the better team, the more athletic team with better players. And eventually, that's why they won the game. So, that's it for the first of many editions, hopefully, of Big Blue Nation Revisionist History Theater here on the Bottom Line Lexington podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. It was good for me personally just to go back and look at these old tapes and listen to this stuff, because this is part of my childhood, and I just remember how important this was to so many people at the time. And I can remember my family just being in such an uproar over potentially Kentucky losing this game. It was good to relive it. Now it's going to be good to stop reliving it, especially if you're a Kentucky fan. So make sure to tune in. Hopefully by next weekend, we will have a podcast up dealing with the following season for Kentucky and a conspiracy theory for the ages that still affects the college basketball game today. So until then, thanks for listening, and may the winners be yours.